The 23rd of August 1942. What kind of nightmare begins when a city turns into a slaughterhouse? When fire rains from the sky, the ground itself screams, and a medic must crawl through rivers of blood with no weapon except his hands, asking himself in pure terror whether saving one more life is worth seeing one more man die. On this day, the German 6th Army smashed into Stalingrad. And while history remembers shattered factories, burning tanks, and Hitler's obsession with a name on a map, the real horror unfolded at ground level, where medics fought a private war against death itself, unarmed and hunted. As Luftwaffe bombers reduced the city to flaming rubble and turned civilians into ghosts wandering through smoke-choked streets. Because once the bombing stopped, the killing became intimate and endless, with Soviet medics like Junior Lieutenant Mikhail Petrov, one of thousands, whose names were never recorded, dragging wounded soldiers from shell holes, while machine gun bullets snapped inches above the snowless dirt, his hands slipping on blood, frozen black by ash. Hearing men scream for their mothers while German artillery pounded so hard that the ground trembled like a living thing. And every step forward meant stepping over bodies that were already stiff, bloated, or burned beyond recognition. Because Stalingrad was not a battle, but a grinding nightmare where survival was measured in minutes, not days, and medics were forced to make decisions that would haunt them forever, choosing who could still be saved and who would be left to freeze or bleed out in the ruins. Even as snipers watched for the Red Cross armband that marked a healer as an easy target, turning mercy into a death sentence. Inside the wrecked tractor factory and the Red October steelworks, fighting collapsed into hand-to-hand chaos, with grenades thrown across rooms still filled with wounded men, and medics crawling through darkness lit only by muzzle flashes and burning oil, sometimes discovering too late that the man they were treating was already dead, his eyes open and mouth frozen in a final gasp, while rats fat from feeding on corpses ran across faces without fear, and the smell of rot mixed with cordite until even breathing felt like swallowing poison. During the autumn of 1942, temperatures dropped, supplies vanished, and the Volga River became the only lifeline. Yet crossing it meant certain death as German artillery bracketed the water day and night, boats exploding midstream, spilling wounded soldiers into icy currents where they vanished without a sound. And medics who survived the crossing often arrived with frozen uniforms stiff as boards, carrying stretchers heavier than their own bodies, because wounded men were loaded with mud, ice, and terror. And sometimes a medic would realize halfway through treatment that the patient was a boy no older than 17, shaking uncontrollably, not from cold, but from shock, whispering that his legs were gone, even though he could not yet see the damage. Horror followed them underground into cellars and sewers where makeshift aid stations were set up, among corpses stacked like firewood, because there was nowhere else to put them. And candles burned next to open wounds, while amputations were performed without anesthesia, the screams muffled by collapsing walls and continuous shellfire. And when German assaults broke through, medics often stayed behind on purpose, knowing capture meant execution, but believing that one more bandage, one more tourniquet, might keep a man alive long enough to matter, long enough to fight again, or at least long enough to say goodbye. As winter tightened its grip in November, frostbite became as deadly as bullets, and medics treated blackened fingers and shattered limbs with knives so dull they tore flesh, while Soviet counteroffensives slowly encircled the German 6th Army, trapping tens of thousands of enemy soldiers who now faced the same horrors they had inflicted. And in a cruel twist of fate, Soviet medics began treating German wounded as well, discovering that suffering sounded the same in every language, that fear smelled the same, and that dying men all reached for a human hand when the end came. Even as starvation ravaged both sides, and the city became a frozen graveyard of tanks half buried in snow, and corpses locked in lifeless poses, weapons still clutched in rigid fingers, In January 1943, as the encircled Germans collapsed and General Paulus surrendered what was left of his army, medics walked through ruins that no longer resembled a city, stepping over thousands of frozen bodies, some still kneeling behind cover as if waiting for orders that would never come. And those who survived carried invisible wounds far deeper than shrapnel, haunted by the faces they could not save and the screams that never stopped echoing in their dreams. Because Stalingrad did not end when the guns fell silent. It followed its survivors home, carving itself into their memories forever. And today, when we talk about heroism, we must ask ourselves not only about the men who fired rifles or commanded armies, but about the unarmed medics who crawled through hell to pull life from the jaws of death. Because if courage is measured by how close one walks to fear, then the medics of Stalingrad stood closer to terror than anyone else. And now I ask you, if you were forced to choose between saving one wounded soldier while knowing 10 more would die screaming behind you, would you still step forward into that frozen, blood-soaked darkness?